welcome to the Sports CDP Crash Course with Data Talks, where we talk data, sports and sports customer data platforms to help you deliver a world-class supporter experience. Each episode on this podcast is specially curated to give you deep and current insights on how to get the right message to the right supporter at the right time and through the right channel. So without further ado, let's dive right into today's lesson. In today's episode, we are discussing women's sports. Fortunately, over the last few years, the conversation on barriers to the success of women's sports has been gaining traction. Unfortunately, though, this has not been happening at a fast enough pace, and therefore the growth in women's sports organizations, although steadily increasing, leaves a whole lot to be desired. This episode does not aim to oversimplify the complexity of the issues faced by women in sport and women's sports organizations, but rather aims to discuss the most pressing issues that we have identified. These issues are readily solvable. That's why we chose to focus on them today. Our focus is, of course, on the three biggest obstacles facing women's sports, which are, number 1, lack of funding and support, number 2, limited media coverage, and number 3, limited marketing spend. Let's start off with the lack of funding and support. We read an article where the author claimed that underfunding and understaffing and generally not supporting women is standard practice in sports. And then we did some digging. And well, a gender equity report conducted by the University of Massachusetts, for example, showed that the university allocated nearly $1 million more to male athletes than to female athletes. What though of the limited media coverage women's sports get? Different reports give different statistics for the total percentage of media coverage women's sports receive, but the range is between 4% at the lower end and around 7% at the higher end. This means that between 93 to 96% of all media sports coverage goes to men's sports. In case you're tempted to think, well, it's probably because not a lot of people are fans of women's sports. Think again. According to Nielsen Sports, a survey across 8 key markets around the world, such as the US, the UK, France, Italy, Germany, Spain, Australia, and New Zealand, found that 84% of sports fans are interested in women's sports. So there is a huge discrepancy between the appetite for women's sports and the actual coverage they get. The other problem? Most sports organizations do not allocate enough money to marketing their women's divisions, which leads to a very vicious cycle of huge wage gaps. And many industry experts agree that if women's sports organizations received equal marketing budget and push as the men's sports, women in sports would collectively generate more revenue and prove that they warrant higher wages. Here's another interesting fact. Women's sports get only about 0.4% of all corporate sponsorship deals. And did you know that even when women's teams are more successful than their male counterparts, they don't always get the monetary gains and support for their efforts either? Well, let's look at the USA national soccer teams, for example. The women's team are 4 times World Cup champions. In 2019, they won the World Cup, while in 2018, the US male team failed to even qualify for the games. Yet, they still had different contracts that rewarded the men more for their efforts than the women. After a lawsuit, the US Soccer Federation finally announced that it would offer the respective players' unions for the men's and women's national teams the same contract proposal. All this to say, as the sports community, we could do so much more to support women's sports. Let us leave you with this question. Are you doing the best you possibly can to support women in sports today? And if not, what practical changes could you actually make to do better? If your goal is to deliver a world-class supporter experience at every game and you want to know how you can meet that goal and get started today, then visit our website at datatalks.sc and fill out our demo form to experience firsthand how we can help you. Or you can sign up for our masterclass or email list to get exclusive materials such as ebooks and case studies that will help you meet your goals better. Until next time, stay productive. Data Talks. We fill the stadium, you focus on the game.